Now let's work on the large motif, which is a double fan doubled. I find it's easier to make a double fan doubled if I make my first stitches around a needle or a counting pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this large size 18 needle right in the center of my area. Let's see, make sure that this is right in the middle. Yep, that's right in the middle. And it's not going to stay there for very long. It's just going to stay there long enough for me to establish the center of the double fan doubled. I have anchored both of the threads that I'm going to be using. I have my light pink, which is going to be oriented vertically, and my dark pink, which is going to be oriented horizontally. I always go ahead and anchor both threads. I do this before I place the needle. It's easier, and I am working with a really long length of thread so that I can hopefully make all of the double fan doubled without having to rethread. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've brought the needle up at 1 to begin my double fan doubled, and I'm going to end it here. So you can see that this is directly above, but on the way I'm going to go around the needle. Okay, now I'm going to bring the needle up at the top, straight across, and I'm going to end it here, but I'm going to go around the needle, and on the way, so I'm going around the needle, I'm going to slide under the first stitch. And I'm going to end right there. This is in a straight line with the beginning of this stitch, which is up at the top. Here's the beginning, and we're in a straight line. And it's in a straight line with the beginning of the first stitch. And I'm going to park my needle where I'm going to need it next. So with the light pink, all of my stitches are going to, I'll talk about rounds here in a minute, but all of these half rounds with the light pink are going to begin on the lower right side. And so you can bring the needle up 1 canvas thread to the left, because in adjacent holes, there's no skipped holes, and now I'm going to just park this needle out of the way on top of the canvas. I always do it on top of the canvas so that the thread doesn't get tangled up underneath. Now I'm going to pick up the second needle, and I'm going to end. Here's where the first stitch is going to begin, and it's going to end right here, and I'm going to go around the needle before I end the stitch. I'm not doing anything with the light pink thread at this point. I'm just going to make an X like I did with the light pink, but this time with the dark pink. So I'm going to bring the needle up, straight up from where it ended. I'm going to go around the needle, and I'm going to end right there. And before I end, I'm going to slide the needle under the dark pink thread only, not the other thread. Okay, so here I have 2 bases for double fans. The light pink is one base, the dark pink is the other base. And now I'm going to bring this needle up where I'm going to need it next, which is going to be right here. With the dark pink, I'm always going to begin these half rounds along this lower left edge. So I always bring the needle up where I'll need it next, and I park it out of the way. Now I'm going to go back to the first color, the light pink. And now I'm going to put these 2 double fan bases together. I'm going to go over the first one, under the second one, over the third one, and under the fourth one. I'm taking care not to split the threads, and I'm going to end right there. So even though I'm working with a super long length of thread, it's not entering the canvas that much, so it shouldn't degrade as I stitch with it, but I'll be keeping an eye on it. Okay, now I've got 2 endpoints with the light pink here, so I need 2 endpoints with a light pink on this side. Okay, let me adjust where the eye is so that the tail won't get too caught up. I'm going to go over the first 2 threads, under the second thread, over the third thread, and under the next 2 threads. And I'm taking care that my thread doesn't get caught up around this center needle. I'm almost to the point where I'm going to take it out, but not yet. Okay, then I'm going to end right here. And so that's this half around, so I'm going to bring the needle up where I'm going to need it next, which is right there. Now I'm going to go back to the second color. And I'm going to go over, under, over, and under. I don't want to have any tangles or knots because it will affect the way the center looks. And this is a really twisty thread that's wanting to twist up on itself, so I'm keeping an eye on that. So that this stitch is going to end right here. One thing I do when I'm working with a long length of thread and thread that likes to twist on itself is I run it through my fingers as I'm bringing the needle up to begin a stitch and as I'm taking the needle down to end a stitch. Okay, so now we're going to go over, under, over, and under. And the needle goes down right there. Okay, so now I've got 2 endpoints of each color in every quadrant. And I am making sure that I haven't gotten caught on this needle. In fact, I don't need this needle anymore, so I'm going to pull it out. That's all I need it for. And now I'll be able to more clearly see the center as I'm making my stitches. So now we're ready for the next half round. Over, under, over and under. You'll notice that I go over all the threads and under all the threads. I treat them as a group, not as individuals. I'm sharing holes with the bound cross border, and I'm making sure that I don't skip any holes because then the rounds will be uneven. I'm going to go over, under, over, and under. Make sure you go over and under all of the threads. And don't split them because that will affect the way that the center is going to look. Okay, let me move the tail a little bit so that it won't be in the way. Okay, I've brought the needle up and parked it where I'm going to need this color next. Now pick up the second color. Over, under, over, and under. The needle goes down right here. Bring the needle up. And we're going to go over, under, over, and under. Bring the needle up for the next round. Now I have the same number of endpoints with both colors. Got a little bit of a twist in it underneath that I'm trying to work out because I don't want that little twist to interfere. When I am finished, I don't want any loose threads. I want everything nice and tight around the center. Ready for the next round. Let's see if I can adjust the way this is looking just a little bit. Okay, so I've brought the needle up here. I'm ready to go. And I can tell by looking, if I follow the threads that are already on the canvas, I'm going over, under, over, and under. If you normally work with a petite needle, you may want to work with a regular length needle. There's, just because of the way that you're having to weave things together. Okay, I'm going to bring the needle up here. And I'm going to go over and under, over and under. It doesn't matter where you slide the needle over and under, if you do it close to the center or if you do it out closer to the edge. Whichever is easiest and will help you control the thread better will work just fine. Park this where I'm going to need it next, right there. Pick up the second needle. I go over, under, over, and under. And again, if I look at the thread, I can see how the thread wants to move. And that will help me to stay on track as I'm stitching my double fan doubled. Over, under, over, and under. There's some separation occurring at the center. And again, all that does is it helps you to slide your needle into the proper position, and so that's a good thing. And this is where I'm going to need this next, so I'm going to bring the needle up. I'm going to continue stitching this double fan doubled, and you'll notice that the end points are moving closer together. And so I'm just going to continue doing exactly what I've been doing, making these rounds, alternating, doing the vertical stitches with the light pink and the horizontal stitches with the dark pink until I am close to the end, and then I'll come back and show you how to end off the threads. Now I'm ready to finish off my double fan doubled. I have one more round with each color to do. So these rounds are exactly like the previous rounds. You're going to go over the first group of threads, under the second group of threads, over the third group, under the fourth group, and then down. I'm going to bring the needle up right beside where these stitches were on this side. And I'm going to go over the first group, under the second group. I'm still taking care not to split any threads. Over the third group, under the fourth group, and then down. And so this is the last stitch that I'll be making with this color. Now, I've got one hole right in the center of each side with this color, and I'm going to end off with a little pin stitch. Now, to make my pin stitch, I'm just going to separate with my fingernail, just like this. I'm going to make a pin stitch in the shape of a T. I'm doing this from the front so that I make sure that I don't catch any of the stitches that I've put in. You can make your ending pin stitch over just stitching twice if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and do 3 just to make sure I'm well anchored. Let me pull this apart just so I can see it. Like I said, I'm being very careful not to catch the stitches of the double fan double that I've put in. Bring the needle up one more time, and then I'm going to snip off this thread. Now I'm pulling up on this thread. I've got quite a bit of tension on it. I'm going to hold my scissors as flat as I can, and I'm going to snip. Then I take my needle and just kind of stroke these threads back into place to make sure that my pin stitch is all covered up. Now I'm going to make the last stitches with the darker pink. Being very careful not to catch any of the threads along the way. And now I'm getting all caught around my tacks and everything else. I'm making sure that this thread is sliding easily. That means I haven't caught any threads or split any threads of the previous stitches. Okay, and now I've got one hole on each side here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to end off with a little T-stitch. Sometimes I think these pin stitches would be better if I had 3 hands. Of course I don't, so I just have to do the best I can, make sure I don't split any threads. Because then the threads wouldn't stroke back into place when I have completed my T-stitch. It's better to end off with a pin stitch like this than to try to weave the threads into the back, because the threads of the carry threads of the double fan doubled are very long and loose, and they're not a good place to anchor. And to weave into the backs of the bound crosses, the pink may show through. So I'm pulling up, snip, and let me just stroke these back into place. Make sure it's all covered up. So this is my double fan doubled completed. I have a hole at each corner. I have a hole in the middle of each side. And you can see that my center is all very nicely woven together, tightly swirled, and that's exactly the look that you want for a double fan doubled.